On the Cutting Mat with toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to On the Cutting Mat with toy-polloi, and this is a special extra episode I'm recording for Corey from Make Shape Create, who left a comment under the second episode of On the Cutting Mat asking me to show you how to make one of the pin tools that I use for painting fine details on things like the He-Man figure and dropping glue on other things. You'll see me use these all the time, and it's a tool that I made a little while back, and actually this was quite good timing because I just happened to break the pin tool that I'd made. So today we are going to make a new one. In fact, we're going to make a couple because it's such a useful tool. So what it is, it's essentially a pin that I then stick into an old paintbrush. And the reason I use this tool is because it gives you such a sort of fine control for putting tiny amounts of paint or tiny amounts of glue onto sort of the toy that you're working on. It really is a very useful tool to have, and it's incredibly easy to make. So what you need is a pin like this. I've got a few of them here, and an old paintbrush. Generally, I get through quite a few paintbrushes when working on toys. They don't last particularly long, and I like to keep the handles of them because they are incredibly useful. So you can see here, this is just an old paintbrush handle. I have another paintbrush here which is sort of past best. The bristles are starting to go, and I can use this one as well because the ends are held on with these sort of bits of metal, and generally with a little bit of a pulling you can take that off and you've got a very handy handle left. So what we need to do is just drill a small hole into the end of these, and for that I'm going to be using a pin vise with a very small drill bit in. All you do is just drill a tiny hole in the end of this. It can be as central as you like. I try and get these fairly central just to make the tools look sort of neat and tidy. So just drill a small hole into the end of that. It doesn't need to go in particularly far, but you can see there we've got a tiny hole in the end. And then you take the pin that you're going to use, a pair of pliers like this or wire cutters, and you cut the end of the pin off the head of the pin. So you're just left with the main part of the pin like that. Fairly easy to cut. I don't know where the end went. It flew off behind me. I could hear it rattling around. And then you can stick that into the hole, and the length of it is up to you. That for me is too long. I prefer these pins to be really quite short, so I am going to actually cut that a little bit shorter. It's just sort of, it depends on what you're doing, but for me I like the sort of shortness of the pin. Gives you complete control then. So cut that. That didn't ping off so far, so we can stick that in the end there. That for me is a better length. It just means that I've got a lot of control on it. And then we glue it in place. It's really that simple. It's a very simple tool, but it's incredibly useful. So I've got some super glue here. I'm going to put a little bit of super glue just on the end of that pin, like so. Oh, that's a bit too much, it's dripped off. Put that in there. And then we just need to let that set. This one's a little bit wonky. It doesn't really matter because all you're going to be doing is sort of dotting it around. And on my other one, the reason it looks sort of so fancy is actually because I just got some gold tape like this and wrapped it around the end. And the reason I put the gold tape around the end was so that I could sort of actually quickly see which end had the pointy bit on it, because the last thing you want to do is pin yourself with this thing. So I'm going to cut a bit of this tape, stick it around the end. I'll make the second one, and then I'll have two new pin tools that I can do some painting and gluing with. And there we go, that's the two finished pin tools, or pin brushes. I think pin brushes is probably what I should call these. They are incredibly useful. You will find that you can do much finer detail when it comes to painting with something like this. It just gives you that control. You can essentially take one little drop of paint and drop it onto an eye, and it just makes doing fine details like that so much easier. And it's also really good for putting glue on things as well, because it just gives you complete control. You can just get a small amount of glue on the end of this and dab it exactly where you need. So if you're fixing any toys, I would really recommend making a couple of these. They are incredibly useful. So there you go, that is it for this little sort of mini extra episode of On the Cutting Mat. I hope that answers your question, Corey. This is what I do to make the little pin brushes that I use, and you'll see in many of my videos. I do need to say a massive thanks to everyone who supports me here on Patreon and as a YouTube channel member. It really does help me make more and better videos. So thanks for your ongoing support, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.